Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Glenn Chamoff, Head of Sales at ArchivalOne, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to part 2 of our 3-part webinar series, Digitize, Moving from a Physical to a Digital Archive, Practical Steps to Prepare for Digital Access. If you missed or need a refresher on part 1, which was Organize, Master the Art of Preparing Your Archives for Digital and Publishing, please go to ArchivalOne.com and you'll find it under Past Events. Now, this session is going to be a little bit different than the first webinar, more of a roundtable panel discussion than a presentation, so we hope you enjoy the format. And of course, feel free to ask any questions during the Q&A session, which of course will be at the end. So now, let me proudly introduce the panel for today's discussion. Brandon Wirtz. He is the Assistant Archival Director at HAI with over 10 years experience in the field. And believe it or not, Brandon has a motto, I've never met a collection I didn't want to process. It's a little bit Will Rogers-y, I think, but Brandon leads the organized phase of ArchivalOne. And before I forget and introduce the next speaker, a big shout out and ArchivalOne welcome to Brandon's mom, who has gone to all of Brandon's recitals, sporting events, and now webinars. So welcome. Danny Harbison. Danny joins us next. Danny is the VP at NOS, whose team is responsible for the DIGITIZE component at ArchivalOne. Outside of the office, Danny enjoys being on the water, especially fishing on the Chesapeake Bay, as well as golfing, running, playing paddle tennis, and being with his young family. And he seems to do this all extremely well, which if you know Danny just a little bit, it's not a surprise. Lastly, but far from leastly, is Casper Smithson, the COO at PastView. Casper heads up the PUBLICIZE group, the archival platform. You'll hear Casper talk about PastView on this webinar and much more in part 3 of our series. Casper just ran his first marathon through the streets of Paris, and what an awful place to visit, let alone run in support of one of his several charities. And he actually finished in very decent time. Well done, Casper, for your passion and success. And with those introductions out of the way, let me bring the just mentioned Casper into the discussion to discuss the ArchivalOne solution.
Thanks, Glenn. Wow, that was 2 months ago and it feels like ages. So yeah, brilliant. Looking forward to speaking with everyone today. And as Glenn mentioned, I've got the honor of kicking things off with just giving you a brief overview of the ArchivalOne solution and how this works. So as Glenn mentioned, we heard from Brandon a few weeks ago around the organize piece, one of the key pillars of the 3 pillars that we have within the ArchivalOne solution, the organize, digitize, and publicize. So this is where your journey begins, and we take this content to be able to sort, categorize, and prepare your physical collections for digitization. Whether you're a brand, a museum, or a public organization, this phase ensures that you have clear structure in place before any scanning begins. Why does this matter, you might ask? It reduces the risk by ensuring nothing is lost or duplicated. It helps prioritize what to digitize and why. And it also helps set up and future-proof frameworks that improve discoverability and internal workflows. From boxing and labeling to metadata planning, this stage empowers your teams to act with confidence and ensures that your archive is ready for the next stage, which is the digitization phase. Using high-resolution equipment and skilled technicians, we capture your materials with precision and scanning, indexing, and enriching your content so it's accessible anywhere. I've said those the wrong way around. Anytime, anywhere. So the value here is twofold. We preserve fragile, often irreplaceable items, and you can unlock that content for wider internal use. This is where physical becomes digital, and it is the focus of today's webinar. So I won't discuss that anymore, and I'll be handing over to my colleague Danny shortly to delve into the journey of digitization. Finally, the area which I enjoy most is bringing your story to life with the PUBLICIZE aspect of the ArchivalOne solution. Our platform allows you to present your digital collections beautifully and intuitively, either for internal audiences, external public audiences, or perhaps even through monetization. This is where the archive becomes an asset. You can engage audiences or share your history with the world until you've undertaken the crucial first steps of organizing and digitizing. That's the foundation that makes all this exciting storytelling possible. So in summary, what ArchivalOne solution offers is it lays the foundation by organizing and preparing with clarity, digitizing to preserve and enrich your history, and the publishing of collections and stories to maximize their value.
Thanks, Casper. That was really good. And this does set us up very nicely to bring in Danny and Brandon as well to hear insights and real-world examples of the ArchivalOne solution on these topics: archive, review and preparation, transport and logistics, quality assurance and metadata enrichment, and proof of concept. And let's start off by bringing Brandon back in. Oh, not even back in. It's the first time. To kind of go and chat a little bit, Brandon, about that first critical setting the stage for success process, archive and review and preparation.
Sure. Casper really nailed it with his brief summary of the first webinar that we did. But really, before the digitization ever begins, reviewing and preparing the archival collections is critical to all steps of what we're doing. But it looks different for every project and every client because everybody's collections are at a different stage in their life cycle. So we typically start with an assessment or a survey so that we can understand scope, structure, condition, previous processing that has been completed, and take that information so we can then determine the level of additional processing, which can be as detailed as completely sorting, rehousing, you name it, describing, or it can be as simple as creating the inventory that'll go along with the records to the digitization house. It changes for everybody, and we're very malleable that way. But what we've found is that a well-documented, well-organized collection is so much more prepared for the digitization process. We can prioritize what you're digitizing so that we meet the ultimate goals of the client's initiative. Sometimes that's just for increasing the access to internal users. Sometimes it's for a wider, more public access, and sometimes it's simply creating surrogates of really high value items. But we and our clients have started to recognize that digitization without the organization leads to these completely inaccessible collections of digital assets. So we try to help shift from the scan everything mentality to a scan the right things and do it properly mentality, which is really becoming the standard across the industry.
That's great, Brandon. And if I may add just a quick point to piggyback, it's such a critical part of the process before everything starts flowing downstream. And I've seen, thankfully, I have not been a part of this, but I've seen on a number of occasions where there has not been this organizational foundational piece implemented prior to any type of digitization execution or anything for that matter. And more often than not, when that time is not taken up front to get a level of organization, with the content that is in scope and get a target, a very defined target, everything else becomes moot at that point because, often the deliverables are not met, the timelines are not met. There's, minimal communication. It is setting a project up for failure. So Brandon and his team do such an exceptional job of kind of making a mess organized and getting an idea of, okay, here's what we have and here's how we're going to accomplish it.
Yeah. Excellent point, Danny. Thank you very much. Casper?
Well, I come at it from a technical approach, really. So obviously being the piece of making this technical and bringing everything to life, it just couldn't be any more sort of important, really. So from my side, it really has brought projects to life in a great way, working with Brandon, the discovery phase, and then obviously the digitization. It's understanding the collections, the content, your treasures that you hold within your archives, and really how we can make those. I always use the term PastView ready with a search, and that really kind of brings things together to be able to utilize that initial review and sort of first stages to then get that content into the PastView system, and making it searchable and discoverable in the best way. So through metadata enrichment and other search aspects from there. So it's a really, really important phase, and it's really important that it's done correctly throughout the process on these steps as well. So that's my sort of aspect on that.
Excellent. Great input, guys. Thank you very, very much. I guess it's also a point that we should never underestimate, the archival preparation phase 1 step. It's always very important. Moving on is transport and logistics. And we get a lot of questions about this particular area where how do we handle getting these physical artifacts to where they need to be for further processing and digitization. So Danny, let me turn this over to you about, talking about the physical nature of the process and how you go about doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. I know you said we get a lot of questions around this, but they're often questions that are addressed late in the game, kind of, oh my, what does the transport and logistics of this archive look like? How is that going to be handled? These are our babies. This is an invaluable treasure trove of information, perhaps historical, about the enterprise or organization. And transport kind of, for one reason or another, falls kind of at the end, the bottom of the totem pole, where it's like, oh my, I haven't really given that a whole lot of thought. So I would encourage you to give it some thought. As you are approaching this process, what does that look like? It can go in a couple different directions here. So oftentimes we work with clients that want to digitize on-site at their location. So it becomes less of an obstacle or less of a discussion point. If you're deploying a team on-prem at a client's location and you're digitizing there are less concerns, of course, surrounding what happens to that when it leaves our custody. How is that managed? So just a couple of things to keep in mind with respect to that. Brandon had talked about this earlier, where his team is going in and creating an inventory of what is in scope, what is out of scope, what's to be digitized, what is not to be. And so at that point, you should have a very good understanding of records or historical documents that are going to be leaving your location. You have that inventory established. A lot of clients don't have it, or they have partial inventories, or some of them have full-on inventories, but very rarely. So you've established that inventory up front, which is leveraged quite a bit in the transport process, because when we are doing transport of records prior to them leaving the client location, we're performing various quality control checks around the inventory that is being taken off site, how it's being tracked and managed. So typically we'll inventory at the item level and confirm as we are loading up content. And then we are also tracking at the batch or the container level prior to it leaving the location with a barcode and some description that is attached to that barcode. That is really where you're establishing chain of custody immediately. So you have that inventory, you've established chain of custody. Now it's time for load and transport. All of the content is loaded onto a secure and dedicated vehicle. If you ever go through this exercise, do not, I wouldn't settle for anything less than a secure and dedicated truck that is only going to have your content. It's not going to be intermingled, co-mixed. there should be multiple drivers. So there is not, it's not, you're not stopping overnight at a hotel and parking it in some parking lot and waiting for the driver to wake up in the morning and drive it back. It should be dedicated throughout. That way you have a very good feel that at all times it's in transit. Also, you should be getting updates on progress. And as the truck is delivering, let's call it from Chicago to DC, you should have a good feel as to where that truck is at any given point in time through progress updates. Something I left off was serialized zip ties. So there should be some serialized zip tie that is the lockdown on the truck. The only person that can open that is at the destination location, and making sure that it matches the serialized zip tie that was tied on the origin destination. And then obviously you're going to want to have padded, padded secure containers. It all depends. You may require climate controlled transport. That might be a requirement in some of these projects. And then of course, with anything, you want to have contingency plans and routes in place. So anytime I have a team that's going out to pick up content, there's always contingency routes that are in place in case of X. In case of X, here is what we do, and here is what that looks like. So again, this is not to overcomplicate it. It's a simple thing. You pick up content and you take it to another and you take it to your destination. But there are a number of security factors that need to be implemented that kind of weave in and out of that process, just to give the client peace of mind that, okay, here's what we picked up. Here's where it is. It's secure. Here's where it is now. Here's what we received at the destination. Here's the delivery transmittal outlining that. And then that chain of custody that was established prior to it leaving your location carries on throughout the entire digitization process. So it's not just a one-off, it goes throughout the entire process, and it's critical. So everything is tracked, and you have insight into where it is at any given point in time.
That's excellent, Danny. And just a point around that is also that we have tried and true partners in the transportation logistics field who help us out on a consistent basis. So we wouldn't leave that up to our clients to go ahead and find that if they did not want that.
Definitely, and I come at this again in a slightly different approach with the actual delivery of that transport and logistics. So often these projects can often run over several months, several years, perhaps. Several decades maybe, on often where we come at it is, and work closely with Danny and the team, is that very instantly we can ingest content into the system. So if you're looking at batches of transportation or materials there, then we can obviously look to get that content into the system and delivered into the system as quickly as possible, so that you've got that return on that investment immediately, access to the content, and being able to search and publicize that content from there. So I guess that lends quite nicely with phased batches, maybe working on materials that require that conservation need sort of early on, so that they can be preserved quickly and sort of secure, and obviously through a combination of managing a project over multiple financial years, for example, or longer terms from there, so we can sort of collaborate and work together to get that content in and immediately accessible to you, your team, and public, perhaps. So.
Excellent, Casper. Thank you. Now, I know we're going to dive deeper into digitization, the power of PastView and publishing, but given the criticality of the quality assurance and metadata enrichment for digitization assets, maybe there's some tips we can now share with your experiences, and also what is happening really in the industry. Casper, let me turn that over to you for quality assurance.
Well, yeah, definitely quality assurance, metadata, key aspects on that. I just lost my screen there, so I'm glad I'm still with you. The key areas, I guess everybody's just sort of wanted to talk about and going through, and one of the key areas I really want to talk around machine learning, AI, those sort of technologies. But before we jump into some of that area, obviously we've got some traditional approaches to the quality assurance, both through the digitization phase and putting that content into the system. Processes like checksums, making sure that digital files are actually transitioned and moved into the system, working together to actually connect those files, ensuring that every single page of your books, of your PDFs, of your audio-visual files have come across, so making sure that those are secured in transition, so our data migration teams would work closely in terms of that deliverable and checking files as they come through from a QA perspective in terms of that. In terms of the metadata and enrichment, I mean, this is the really sort of fascinating and area that I certainly love talking about. We can do some really interesting search filters and criteria from there, which all lends in the work that Brandon and Danny are doing early on in the processes. So understanding what the collection is, how it is structured, really trying to learn from you as the collection holders how you want to search that, how your audiences want to search that, and then we can obviously help to make those functionalities happen. We've got some examples that we can run through shortly in the webinar. And then there's obviously the machine learning, all the excitement around making handwritten text searchable through documents, that instant access to that content that might have once taken times to dig through index cards or records or other content to find or locate what you're after. You can instantly search straight across, handwritten, typed, even audio-visual collections, things like facial recognition, auto descriptioning, other key features coming out. But at no stretch of this is a replacing functionality to any of the traditional methods, because all of this needs checking. It needs ensuring that this content's correct. It needs to identify. It might be able to link all the photographs of me together, but it might not be able to determine who that individual is. So there's still a high level amount of work to be done there to actually sort of integrate and link that information from that. But I'm going to stop because I could talk, continue to talk, and maybe Brandon, there's some areas you want to discuss, because I know we've done some really interesting and fun projects on the metadata from the digitization phases as well from there.
Yeah, our team and Danny's team really worked together on this, gathering the various aspects of metadata that goes into these things, whether it's the technical structural components of the digitized items themselves, or if it's the more descriptive aspect of things. All of it really goes into, like you said, building that trust in the digitized collection, knowing that the information you're searching for and the information that you're finding about these things is accurate. Really helping to increase the accessibility of these things, and making sure that you trust the information that's there, however it's gathered, whether it's by humans or by the technology that we're developing for this stuff. But it sort of makes you feel more comfortable about utilizing these assets more, especially when you've got really fragile collections, or you're retiring some things from public access because of their fragility. It really just builds that trust in the final product.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. The last topic on the roundtable discussion is proof of concept. I think we've been asked more than a few times if it's possible to do a POC before scaling to a full-blown project. There's obviously a lot of advantages to do this and to be considered, and we do have several highlights and measures of success we can share with you now. Brandon, would that be you who want to start that up for us?
I'll jump in, actually, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry, Brandon, to cut in front of you.
And Danny, you should have been the one.
All good. The Glenn had mentioned that we often get pinged about proof of concepts, and if we're able to do that. Not only are we able to do that, but I would implore you that it should be a requirement in your project. For a number of reasons. Of course, it may slow down the timeline, it may slow down the execution, but that's what kind of, an underlying current of this entire presentation is take the time to do it correctly. And so I would highly encourage you to do a proof of concept, because selfishly, for the actual capture and execution team, it helps us tremendously, because what it does is it outlines, potential obstacles, any concerns. They're going to rise to the surface if you're doing a proof of concept. And ideally, you're doing a proof of concept around a subset of the collection, obviously, but you want it to be representative of the overall collection. So it could be various media types. It's going to be small scale in nature, of course, but what it does is it kind of gets everyone, and it ensures that everyone is on the same page, and there is accountability flowing both ways. So on my side, it helps my team get an understanding of the obstacles, get a feel for the content, make sure that we've identified any and all obstacles that are going to arise, and kind of helps us fine tune our SOPs that are going to be distributed out to the team. What it does on the end user or the client level is a couple of different things. So they're going to have a much greater degree of confidence as to what they're getting in return. The last thing that anyone on this call wants is to get, thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of digitized images back that simply are either, not what you thought you were getting, perhaps, or, subpar. That's the last place that anyone wants to be, is to go through this entire process and get to the finish line and be like, great, we're done, but I'm not really happy with how this looks. So it establishes that upfront. Here's what we digitize. Here are the various media types. We run it through the whole process, get a look on it. It allows us to make any last minute adjustments or tweaks to the standard operating procedures that we're executing on our end. And it demonstrates capability and of course builds trust before you're committing to this full scale deployment and really kind of putting the pedal to the floor.
Great, Danny. Let me just turn it over, see if Brendan or Casper have any other input on that.
I was just going to say, Danny used the word there, demonstrates the capability. And I think, in terms of the proof of concept, that's exactly what's important there in terms of doing that. And one thing that jumped to mind is things like testing the capabilities of some of the machine learning and AI tools that we've got within the system. So during the proof of concept, it doesn't just stop with the scanning and looking at all of the content. It's actually a great opportunity to use a sort of versatile mix of content so that you can actually ingest, put that into the system, and be able to see what sort of results are returned from that stage as well. So it really helps with some of that functionality later down the line as well from there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casper. And I think that through the roundtable discussion, we do have some key takeaways. I will not read these bullet items to you, but you can scan them now. We can certainly send them to you in advance. I think now we want to move on to the spotlight of the second webinar, which is digitization to publishing. For this phase, it basically brings the ArchivalOne offering to life. This is the magic basically behind the scenes that you see at the end of the day. So I'm going to turn this right now over to both Danny and to Casper. So guys, take it away from here, and let's hope that you are able to pick this one up. Casper, take over the screen.
Cool. Thank you, Glenn. And absolutely, I love that you had said that this is where it begins to come to life. This is where all of the hard work and the preparation and kind of the foundation that has been built starts to bear fruit. I was reluctant on if I was going to use this analogy because I use it a lot internally with our folks, but I think it helps with kind of demonstrating and illustrating what the process looks like. So I prefer to liken the digitization and publication piece to building a car, okay? Every phase in the process is a critical assembly step. And, you know, if you miss one, or if one is done poorly, the entire machine is going to underperform at the end. You're not going to get what you're not going to get the car that you thought you were getting. Casper and I are going to spend a little bit of time. We're going to kind of go back and forth with one another. And we're going to spend a little time. I'm going to walk you through, just do a high level overview of what the process looks like. Casper's going to pop in every now and then to show you some cool visuals as you can kind of see, all right, here's what this book looks like in the picture prior to digitization. Here's the process that it goes through. Here's what it actually looks like when it's publicized, which is really, really neat. And here are some of the capabilities that you can perform around that. So the first phase in the process is handling and preparation of the content. Back to the car analogy, prep is and handling is like the quality inspection of all of the parts before the car assembly begins. You want to make sure that every item is stable. You want to make sure that every item is ready for the production line. No, you don't want any of flaws to carry forward. And if there are flaws, you want to know about those flaws. So in this part of the production phase, the digitization phase, the team would have a pretty good feel for what they're digitizing because of the organization piece that happened up front. We know what's in scope. We know what we're taking custody of. But you're also looking with a fine-tooth comb. You're inspecting for mold. You're inspecting for damage. Let's take this bound book, for instance. You want to be able to get a feel and an understanding of the restrictions around that bound book. Perhaps there are an extremely tight bindings where the text is riding into the crease of the book. Perhaps there's foldouts. You're going to want to see our pages. Are there any pages that are bent? Are there any pages that are folded? Are there any foreign materials that reside in these books or inserts perhaps that need to be removed? So you're going through the content with a fine-tooth comb and you are getting it ready for full-scale production. The goal during the prep and handling is to put the capture team in the best possible position to succeed and digitize the content according to the specifications that have been developed. The next phase in the process is the actual capture, so the digitization. This is like assembling, this is like putting the engine in the car. It is the core structure of the deliverable, right? Without that core structure, nothing else matters. So obviously, if you're not digitizing content, nothing else really matters. Not only if you're not digitizing it, it needs to be done in high resolution format. It needs to be properly sequenced. All of this stuff is going to kind of wrap into that engine. And it's going to drive a lot of what you're getting out of that on the back end. So in our process, we're using cradle-mounted overhead planetary scanners for bound books. Sometimes there's a glass press, sometimes there's not. Depends on the type of content. You're capturing at a high resolution, depending on what the actual physical originals look like. You're going to need to adjust your resolutions. You're going to need to adjust your color thresholds and what are the protocols around that. Of course, you're following non-destructive scanning protocols, critical to ensure page sequence. It's critical to ensure orientation. You want to make sure that alignment is consistent. And so you can get to what Casper is looking like now. That's the way you get there. You have to hit these steps in the assembly line. So before I dive into metadata and quality assurance, which are the next steps in the process, let's take a look, Casper, and preview, and why don't you run through a little bit how some of these images actually come to life in the publication side.
Fantastic. Thanks, Danny. And yeah, just taking a look here at the Royal Mint Museum. And just showcasing one of their Waterloo Medal rolls, which was transcribed and showing all the recipients of the Waterloo Medal. And one of the collections that I wanted to show and really resonates with some of the processes that Danny's just been talking about is their annual report collection. I'm just trying to remind myself how many pages are in this collection, so I'm just going to hit search. So there's about 6,000, 7,000 pages. Within the collection, and here you can see great large thumbnails of each individual volume issue dating back to 1870. And once we go into those individual volumes, you can then see there the sort of page turn technology to be able to engage with the content. This is an 82-page PDF document, so a PDF file, which is loaded each individual page, in this case scanned as a double 2-up image. You can see here the system's automatically watermarking, protecting your images, and also the ability to be able to see quickly, so low res images on the first side so that things can load quickly for you. But also, as Danny mentioned, the resolution piece, really important, and where our loop tool or the full page view becomes really important so that you can actually see that real high resolution and detailed image, such as the pages here. You really notice some of the staining there on the pages as well, and yeah, you get a real good feel of some of the content. So passing back to you, Danny.
Casper, awesome. Never gets old looking at that. Yeah, I just always love looking at it. So on to the second part of our process, which is going to be, or the third part, which is going to be the actual metadata capture and enrichment. So you know, at risk of being repetitive, I'm going to go back to the car assembly analogy. It works for me. Hopefully it works for you too. To be TBD. So metadata, think of metadata as the wiring in the dashboard in the car. It's going to connect everything. It's going to organize everything so the final product can operate and be understood by the end users. It's kind of ties everything together, right? And in this phase, at capture, you're assigning descriptive, administrative, structural metadata, which could be to the tune of, you know, title, author, publication date. You have page numbering, chapters, various sections. You're identifying language, subject tags, perhaps, source repository, date, if I haven't already said that. We're also assigning file naming conventions and using OCR engines to start bring that searchable text to life. Additionally, and prior to publication, you're tying all of this metadata to the image files that are eventually going to make their way into this system. So you know, I think that at this point, you have you have the bones, you have everything. It's starting to come to life. Now let's tie it all together and make it as usable and searchable and findable as possible, and researchable. Right? You're going to want to be able to retrieve and research documents and content in an easy format. So, Casper, why don't we take a quick look? You know, how the metadata and how the text recognition gets surfaced for the end users and what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, definitely. I thought I was actually just using the Society of Jersey collection here, where they've got an amazing collection of annual bulletins. They've actually split them down into individual articles and so on. But one of the areas that I wanted to actually talk about today is newspapers, because it works really nicely. We can actually take a look back 200 years ago on this day to actually do a search and see what was going on in Jersey. So I was quite excited about that. So we're going to jump into the newspaper collection here. So slightly staying with bound volumes, but much larger broadsheet newspaper volume. So you can see here that there's multiple different collections that Jersey have digitized and put onto the PastView system. There are roughly, I think, 120,000 pages, so a colossal collection to make searchable and discoverable. As Danny mentioned, you can go straight in and just do keyword searching directly into the collection, into the search form directly into here, and see results within the entirety of the collection. But what we're going to look at as well is some of the metadatas fields that are within stamped onto all of these pages to enhance and look at the content. So we're going to look in June the 4th, 1825. So we can apply this to the search. We can actually look back and we can see that's filtered us down to 12 results, so taking us directly to that day. If, for example, you needed a little bit more of a sort of capture window to be able to move up and down, we've also got the ability to sort of select plus and minus, in this case years, but this could be days, months, and so on. And there's other metadata fields in here to be able to filter between the languages. This particular collection, there's 3 newspaper series, which is the Gazette and also the Chronique newspaper, all in French. So we're just going to take a quick look at the Chronique here, and we can see within this particular newspaper, you can see that it loads incredibly quickly for such large files. These must be sort of 10, 15 sort of megabyte images and incredibly high quality. So thanks to the digitization process and ensuring that capture is to the resolution and process to make these captured really well. And that also improves and enhances the search functionality within the system, so that it can actually find these results that we've just looked for. So I've just searched there for bank. And we can see here the reference to Mr. Banks. We can see another reference up here, M. Banks again, and other information within there. So for such large and such high density words on these pages, due to the resolution during the digitization capture, this has brought it together to be able to do that keyword searching directly onto the content, either typed or handwritten. And it's also got all of the metadata to be able to do the date range searching that we just showed, filtering into the different series, looking at the locations and language as well throughout the collection and content. So that talks a little on the metadata and how that all sort of brings it all together. So back to you, Danny. That's
great. Thank you, Casper. Appreciate that. So the next step in the process would just tie them both together. You know, it's not as linear as this when we talk about quality control. It's not just done at the end. It is run concurrently throughout the capture process, and kind of weaves in and out of each of the various stages. But for simplicity's sake, let's just quickly discuss what quality control looks like. It's sort of, you know, there will be multiple levels of quality control, and then there will be a final inspection prior to export and publication. So at this point, you're again verifying image clarity, you're verifying completeness of the scans, you're verifying consistency. Obviously, you want to confirm that any metadata is accurate, as well as file naming conventions and characters that have been specified, uppercase, lowercase. You know, what does that look like? That will have all been laid out up front. It should be in the SOP document. So you want to make sure that you are hitting those specifications prior to export and publication. You're also checking OCR output and structural navigation. And then, of course, if there's any issues, if there's any concerns around capture or metadata application, you're going to want to recapture those images that are going to be flagged during the quality control process. Finally, everything is then exported out and batch imported into the publication system. So, you know, this is at the point in the car comparison where everything is ready for delivery to the showroom floor. It is pristine. It looks good. It has been inspected over and over and over again. Now it's time to really showcase it. Now it is time to show the entire collection and what that looks like. You know, typically we'll deliver in an archival and an access format, as Casper was talking about earlier. You want to compile all the metadata packages and then hand off to the publication team. So Casper's going to quickly show you how a fully completed collection is structured and accessed.
And
Awesome,
Casper,
thanks.
this is Glenn.
Yep.
Let me interrupt for one moment. We're running up against our 12:45 time, our 45 minutes. So for those in attendance, if for some reason we lose you, everything else will be recorded and we'll come back to you. But I just want to let you know that right off.
Definitely, and I'll also, if you've got any questions at this time as well, do feel free to put them in, because hopefully we'll get a couple of minutes just to talk through some of the questions as well. It was a real tough one to choose some organisations that we could talk to about this process, and actually showcasing the entirety of a site. So I actually wanted to just showcase three very quickly though, and this is one particular collection, which is the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. I just wanted to carry out a search quickly on here for the word for the city of Chicago, and just show you how this system works very well with handwritten text documents as well. So you can see in this particular case that the system automatically transcribes handwritten content as well, ingested into the system. And if I just toggle here to be able to select between the text, you can see all of the page recognized text within that. We found some really interesting user cases, not just for your traditional sort of book material, but this working really nicely with photographs. We have a collection of photographs where the school are wearing jumpers with the name of the school, like we're sort of wearing today, fashioning the ArchivalOne t-shirts, and it's actually picked up the name of the school within the top as well, and that's been recognized through the search, which is really sort of interesting and great user cases for photographic content as well. I just wanted to quickly switch over to take a quick look at some photographic content as well, just so that you get a bit of a feel for not just bound materials, but also photographic content. So this is the Herefordshire History website. They've got hundreds of thousands of images within this collection, but one of the favorites for myself is this photograph of a British bulldog with a small child, and I quite like showing this photograph. It reminds me a little of my childhood as well, and in this photograph you can see here that it lends very nicely to all the metadata, the titles, the descriptions, the sort of set of metadata that relates to the images, and what sort of Danny and Brandon were talking about early on. This is all searchable, discoverable. And you can also see these great ways to be able to engage the content into related collections. So in this case, seeing other amazing black and white photographs of other animals within here that all sort of links together. And just finally, one of the projects that I've really enjoyed working on is the HSBC History Archive. They're celebrating their 160th anniversary of a particular exhibition that they're launching, and within this particular system here, they've actually gone that sort of step further from just from having their archives of using the functionality of PastView to make things searchable and browsable, but they've also sort of linked that together by curating their collections into discoverable exhibitions. So this is sort of taking it that level further to link your archive together, pull assets and archive information into a sort of curated exhibition, bringing in titles, descriptions, and then actually linking content directly from the archive, such as this photograph here. So I'll pause. I'm looking forward to speaking with everyone in a lot more detail for our next webinar to talk about PastView, and I'll pass back to Glenn.
Excellent. Thanks, Casper. And it does not look, obviously, that we got cut off, so that's a good thing. We know we're running a little bit late. We do have a little bit of time on our own just for a couple of Q&A. So if Brandon, I think you're able to see the Q&A that are coming in.
Yeah, we've got one question in there, and it's for you, Casper. What languages does the PastView text and audio recognition support?
Oh, brilliant. Well, there's lots. We've got about 30 to 35 tested at present. We use a multitude of different systems as well to process the different recognition tools. So the best way to discover those is to trial it. So we're more than happy to set up test accounts for any organization. You can run secure trials through any of your documents, your PDFs, JPEGs, audio files, and run through that. But I think at the moment there's sort of 30, 35 different languages across audio and text and handwritten documents as well.
Excellent. Anything else, Brendan, at this moment?
Do you have follow-up question? What other recognition services are likely to be developed to help identify and searching the archives?
Well,
facial, probably.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say we're doing a webinar in about 3 weeks' time, and yeah, join and we will. No, there's a lot of interesting things that we're looking at launching. We've got our team of developers that are continually working on advanced technologies to make the archive collections discoverable. Some of the ones that we're quite close with and using technologies is facial recognition, auto descriptioning, captioning, looking at translation as well. Other things that we're working to, which is a little bit further out of the way, but is sort of integrated search and AI searches as well. So being able to sort of ask questions and get responses from the archive content that you have, and several other sort of developments as well that we'd love to delve into in more detail in an upcoming conversation as well.
Excellent. Okay, and with that, I want to thank everybody for attending the webinar today. If you would like to have a conversation with us about your specific needs, please email me. My email address is right there for you. Please visit our LinkedIn webpage, and of course our website. And look out again for the final webinar in this 3-part educational series, which will be, of course, focused on publicizing your collection. I think Casper and obviously Danny did a great job in that part, but this was just a teaser. The amazing thing about PastView is it does a lot more than what you see here, and it's very compelling. So for all of us at ArchivalOne, thank you again for joining. And we hope you found the information interesting and educational. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.